guys, Stephanie here. Today I just wanted to talk about creating a vampire for the game Vampire the Masquerade. I'm about to play in my first campaign for this, so I'm really excited, and I just wanted to go through character creation with you guys. I found this super handy dandy little kind of cheat sheet for character creation. Are they part of Darkpack? I don't really know. I don't know how it works. I've seen this on other things, mainly the other tool I'm gonna show you guys today. They are Mr. Singer on Reddit, but this is a really useful tool. It kind of has some of the little like symbols and everything you'll come across, so I really recommend reading the rules and everything, not just trying to jump into this as just a cheat sheet. This game is very roleplay heavy and has a lot of lore, so really recommend actually reading the rules for this one. But I just wanted to go through and create a quick character with you guys. I'm gonna go over kind of my concept for the game, but you can see that it kind of walks you through everything. And so in Vampire, what you start with is your core concept. I actually kind of start with this for all games, but I'm really glad that they spell it out because it's really easy, I feel like, to just be like, I'm just creating a vampire guy. And I think that this game feels like it has a lot more depth and is a lot more interesting if you think of them as a person first. And that's what I like, that in the cheat sheet it even kind of talks about that and makes sure to include that. And it's just because it really does bring the depth, because you start to think about what would their life be like before, how would it change, what kind of connections to people would they have had. And so we're gonna hop over to the other tool we're gonna be using today, and that is ShrekNet. And so if you've already read the Vampire the Masquerade lore, ShrekNet is not named after Shrek the ogre. It's after the last name of the person who played Nosferatu. So I thought that was a fun, interesting fact. But they have a Discord. You can support them on Ko-Fi, Coffee, however people decide to say it. And so if you click on create a character, it takes you to the page that we're on right now. And so you can see it kind of pre-filled things, so don't panic about that, don't worry. Just go on down. And so first thing is your character's name. My character's name is gonna be Theodore DeWitt, and my character concept. So I really wanted to base this character on Willard. If you haven't seen the movie, like the 2003 version, Willard, but only if he was like a veterinarian. Oops, spelling. So Willard is this really meek kind of guy who befriends some rats he's supposed to exterminate in his basement. That's long story short of the whole concept. And it's a horror movie. The rats are very bad. They're bad rats. And so when I chose this, it kind of went hand in hand with the clan. So that's the next thing you pick. And so there's a bunch of different clans. They're split across both the Storyteller's Guide, I almost said DM, Storyteller's Guide, and the Player's Guide. So you'll want to make sure if you're a player you check out both if the Storyteller is allowing both. But I chose to play a Nosferatu. And so you can see there's a bunch of lore. They kind of show kind of example pictures, which I think is really nice and helpful. They have archetypes. It'll tell you what disciplines you have access to from the beginning, your bane, and all of that will make a lot more sense as you go. So you'll want to pick a clan. And so because I picked Nosferatu, I know I'm going to be kind of disfigured. And the disciplines I would really like to lean into are related to animalism. So I really want this vampire to be animal centric. And it's gonna kind of lean into your archetype. And so if you saw boop boop boop, there were archetype suggestions. So you don't have to pick one of these. You can kind of make your own or kind of combine two concepts. And so I liked more animal than man and rat. So I am calling this archetype a gentle beast is still a beast. And so that's going to kind of guide your play, and there's certain things related to your archetype. But that's what I really want to focus on this character, as leaning heavily into their animalism, into that side of themselves, and kind of relating more to animals. I think in real life they were bullied. I think they didn't have strong social skills. I don't think undeath was necessarily the worst thing that could have happened to them, even with this disfigurement. I think that not much feels like it's changed in their life. But what I do think has changed is kind of that holding on to humanity aspect, and that's one of the things I really liked about the Nosferatu, is they kind of spell out that they're one of the gentler clans. Like they're trying to hold on to more of their humanity. And so I really like the idea of that struggle. I think it'll be a lot of fun to play someone who's always had an easier time talking to and being involved with animals. And that's why I really wanted them to be a veterinarian in real life. And so on the cheat sheet, the order goes through then attributes, skills, disciplines, predator type. But I started thinking about convictions and touchstones a little bit earlier, as well as ambition and desire. And that's just me, that's just the way I think about things. So I started with my ambition. Actually, that's a lie. I kind of started with touchstones a little bit. I knew his major touchstone was gonna be a woman he had a crush on before he was bitten. And this is someone who was nice to him just because it's right to be nice to people. But I think that for Theo, having someone be kind to him is basically yelling out, "Marry me now." And so, boop, boop, boop. I'll put her in touchstones a little bit later, but his game driving ambition is going to be marry Daisy Buford. And so, in my head, he hasn't been in touch with her since he was bitten, and he was bitten probably in the 70s, 80s, but he still feels this kinship because he has been stalking her the entire time. So that's what the ambition should be, something that is an underlying goal and it's measurable in game terms, so it can't be really vague. And so that's what I want his overall ambition to be. And then since we're just starting, his desire is going to be find a way to mask his kind of horrendous appearance, so that when he finally gets up the courage to be like, "Hey Daisy, I'm in love with you," it'll go super well because he'll be handsome. It won't go well. And so even though you build an individual character in Vampire, there are some things that are actually coterie dependent, so you'll decide some things as a group. So I'm leaving some things sect Camarilla. I'm not a part of a cult. Our chronicle doesn't have a name yet. Our storyteller hasn't chosen. So I'm just gonna put ... And so one of the other early decisions is when you were bitten, your relationship to your sire, how are they as a vampire person? And so if you read into the lore, you know, it's not vampires going around biting people willy-nilly, although things do happen. And so there's lore about the Camarilla killing both a sire and their children for creating vampires that, you know, weren't pre-authorized. So I am, however, going with that this vampire is known absentee. And so in my head, Theo was bitten by a vampire trying to slake his lust at the veterinarian office that Theo worked at. And so he was just kind of in a feeding frenzy, and Theo was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so now we'll move over to touchstones and convictions. Like I said, I already have the touchstone, Daisy Buford. And so I think for the conviction, I'm linking kind of to Daisy. And I don't think they have to be linked, but it's kind of the way I thought about them, because for each conviction you need a touchstone, etc. So you need a number, so I kind of think of them as a little bit linked in my head. So for Daisy, the conviction is going to be always protect the ones you love, because we're a cute little vampire. My next touchstone is going to be his mom. That's Dorothy DeWitt. And so I think for Theo, one of his other convictions is going to be obey authority. And so as you come up with these convictions, you'll also be coming up with coterie tenets with your group. And I think it's kind of fun to have ones that there might be some friction for. I think sometimes people are afraid to plan friction. And that's what makes interesting stories and interesting hard decisions. So I think that's part of the fun personally. And then for his final conviction, we haven't gotten there yet, but there's a predator type, and Theodore is still in the phase of his life where he's trying really, really hard to hold on to his humanity. So he's going to be a feeder, and I'll go over that a little bit more, but he's not gonna try to bite people. Try. So one of his convictions is going to be kill only the cruel, and that touchstone is going to be his veterinary mentor, James Merson. James. It's James. And so I think James was always very, very kind to him, and that Theo, even though he's a feeder, maybe when he was first turned, did have an incident with someone at the veterinary office that was cruel to him, but James was always incredibly sweet. And so these convictions and touchstones, I think it goes over it a little bit in the cheat sheet. Yeah, they don't have to be a specific person necessarily. For Theo, I just had a bunch of ideas for NPCs he could be connected to, so that's why mine are all people. But these touchstones are supposed to be things that kind of remind them of their humanity and anchor them to it. So kind of thinking of things like that, things that remind your character not to be a blood-sucking monster. And so now I'm gonna move up to attributes. So these are kind of base skills. Oh, and it's really great. It tells you up here, how many you get. If you forget, again, there's the quick reference guide tells you, and especially if you're using a paper character sheet, it's nice knowing those numbers. So I think that his main attribute is going to be intelligence. I actually have kind of one of my concepts for him is that he's a med school dropout, and I kind of mentioned this earlier that I'm basing him on Willard, and if you haven't seen the movie, Willard's mother is incredibly cruel to him, and so I think his mother constantly kind of teased him about being a med school dropout, but I think when he dropped out, it was when you start interacting with patients. I think he's very, very smart, but just incredibly nervous and anxious around people. So that's what I'm going with, intelligence as his main one, and I'm going with charisma as his dump stat attribute. And so I also think wits would be high, and so it would resolve. I think out of the social related ones, composure would be up there, so that takes care of our 3 at 3. I think manipulation, he would have gotten used to lying to his mom, and then I think he's just been average in these other ones too, so yeah, that was his bump up from his baseline 1. So that has our attributes taken care of, and they're written out in detail in the book, so you can really kind of get a feel for what a rating of 1 is versus a rating of 5. So you can really kind of get an idea for what they think that these attributes would manifest as. So we have attributes done. Next we're gonna go to skills, and there's a lot more skills than attributes, and there's several different skill distributions. I went with specialist because of the med school, I think once again he's just very intellectually oriented, so I wanted to up the ones that are most important. And so I went with medicine as 4. Again, it has the nice little count at the top. And so you'll get to a point where you can fill out the specialties. And again, in the guide, there's kind of a listing of potential ideas, but you can create your own. The idea is for them to be specific though, so you can't just use your specialty in every single situation. But then I'm gonna go with animal chem, academics, because remember, med school, excessive schooling. And then I'm going to go with technology, and that's because I think, especially as his life as a vampire, a disfigured vampire, he doesn't have the opportunity to make a lot of in-person friends, so I think he would have gotten very adept at using technology as a way to connect himself to the world. And then you just kind of follow that train of thought and pick other ones that fit kind of your idea about who this person would be and what skills they'd have. And it's nice because in the book it kind of tells you how you should think about dividing these ones out. So the ones at 1 should be hobby and free time related. His hobby is stalking Daisy, but it gives you guidelines. So that's what the one at 4 is your specialty. The ones at 3 are either work or learning related. So it kind of gives you guidelines on how to pepper these throughout these skills. Beep boop. And then you get to pick your clan. Okay. So like I said, he's gonna be a Nosferatu, and so you get to put 2 dots, and so once again, if you haven't read about dots, they make more sense if you read the rules, but you get to choose one of your disciplines with 2 dots and the other with 1. So you have 3 potential things. Oh my gosh. And it even tells you if you hover over them, perfect. So you have to make a choice here. You kind of have to choose even within this. You get to choose kind of your specialty. What combination are you interested in playing? And so, like I said, animalism is the thing he's most connected to. So that's going to be his 2.1. And obfuscate is the ability to remain unseen. And so Nosferatu is interesting because there's certain ones related to appearance where you actually have a bane. So you get negatives to trying to cover up your disfigurement. So I can choose that, or I can choose potence. And I don't think he's very physically vigorous or strong. So I'm gonna go with obfuscate. And so in the player's guide, all of the clans have an alternative bane. Yeah, that's infestation. But we are using the baseline one here because I like it. I want this bane. So you can never increase your rating in the looks merit with this bane. And so we'll get to choose powers from each of these disciplines, and there's certain ones where you will always have a disadvantage basically with it. So for generation, there's different rules. So if you're playing a higher power vampire, there's more skills you get to like claim and stuff, etc., etc. Once again, rules. But we are playing as 12th generation, and so we are playing as Childer. Childer? How do you say it? I say Childer. But it tells you your blood potency. You can see we have no bonus XP. If we were a neonate, we'd have 15, and we get to make more choices then. But we're starting as Childer. And so here's your predator types. And so there's a bunch of different ones. I am going personally with farmer. I think I said feeder earlier. So farmers do everything they can to not harm humans. And I actually don't think Theo is particularly into harming animals either because he cares about animals a lot. I think he just went with something that wasn't humans and he had easy access to. So I imagine him now as a vampire working at overnights at an animal shelter. Like maybe his job is putting animals down if they haven't gotten claimed. So I think that's a super bummer for this bummer boy, sad boy of a vampire. But I think it'd be reinforcing that moral idea to not harm people. And so it'll tell you you'll be able to gain a specialty. You get to choose between 1 dot of animalism or a protean. And it tells you all the things you get. And so feeding flaw, I think, is actually technically vegan. So I get a disadvantage trying to eat people. That's veganism for vampires. And so I'm going with animalism. Like I said, I'm leaning really hard into that. And my specific animal is going to be rats. I think I want rats. So we have our predator type. And so now you'll get to choose the powers, like the skills with your discipline. And so in the book, it has all of the descriptions. I don't think they're in here, so make sure to get the book. But obviously I really want a familiar, and so make sure If you want to delete something, you can click to delete it, but I do want a familiar. So we have a familiar. The next one, I'd like to be able to talk to them. I think that's what that one is. Let's see. Yeah, you can talk with animals with that one. So that one's very, very important to me, is being able to be a cute little vampire talking to animals. And then my other one is going to be Quell the Beast. And so this one I really, really like because it revolves around... Oops, I think I already went past it. Am I crazy? Yeah, here it is. Okay. So I like the idea of him using this as kind of a power to escape bullies, because vampires are also bullies. That's not something that really changes when you're undead. And so I really like that as a concept. So we got our 3 disciplines for animalism, and then because we only have 1 dot for obfuscate, we have Cloak of Shadows and Silence of Death. So I'm gonna go with Silence of Death because I don't get a penalty to that one. Like I said, with the physical ones, he has his Bane affects that. And I don't think we're strong enough right now to really override that and to make it useful. So I think being super quiet would be a lot better of a choice at this stage. And so after that, you've done a lot of this by this point already. Advantages and flaws are interesting because you have points to spend. And so we'll go into there. Actually, I lied. So now we're going to go into our specialties. And so it'll help you. If you click on it, it'll tell you what specialties you'll have available to put them under. And I'll tell you how many. So I get 3 specialties. For Animal Chem, I know I wanted one of the ones it kind of suggested in the book, which is pacification. Medicine was a big thing for him, so I'm gonna go with veterinary. And then the other specialty I think I'm gonna go with is going to be awareness, and I'm gonna go with instincts. Once again, I'm really leaning into that animal-centric build for him. And so then you have your advantages and flaws. And so these are gonna be points you get to spend kind of related to your background, your domain. And so if you go up, where is it? Yeah, right there. You can already see we have our feeding flaw up there. I don't think it lists our Bane up there yet, but you'll have, maybe that's one of the ones I have to select. And so boop, boop, boop. If we go to merits and we go to looks, then you'll select flaw, and our flaw is repulsive. We're repulsive. And so you'll select that. And so now you got rid of the remaining dots of flaws. But then you can also go through merits, merit category. If I think, I have a ghoul, you can spend dots in different ways. And so you can see that it'll tell you how much something costs. Like, I think that Theo has a haven access. I think one of my parts of his mom is like bedbound, blind, and everything. So he still lives at home. It's a weird setup. He lives in the unfinished cellar, but that is an advantage. So I think he has access to a haven, and I think it's just a 1-dot haven. Goes over that stuff in the book, but you'll go through and you'll spend points like this. And so at this point, you have gotten pretty much everything, and it tells you how to calculate your health, your willpower. I think it just does it automatically for you. Yeah, so that's already done if you're using ShrekNet. So you've pretty much at this point started to get pretty much everything that you need to choose for just yourself. But after that, with the other players, you'll choose Coterie related things. And so that'll be what type of coterie you are. So what type of group of vampires, because you don't all have to be part of the same clan, which is really, really nice. But you're just a little group. Why are you together? So my group chose Fang Gang. So that's what I'd go back to Coterie. And so that's something I'd go back and select. We're a Fang Gang. You have dots that you can use to develop your Coterie, just like you do for character creation. So there's more choices around that, but you'll get to that more when you have your group. That's also the part where you'll get to the relationship map. And that's a really, really fun part of Vampire for me. And they have a really good example in the book of the relationship map. So you can kind of see, you connect yourself to your friends in your coterie, and how you feel about them, how they feel about you, involvements with potential NPCs, with your Sire. So there's a lot of really great ways to kind of pre-work a lot of the emotional storytelling aspects of this in from the get-go. And so I have another player in our group where I'm like, we'd be buddies. He's a hacker. My skill set is very much oriented to that type of stuff to help him. So I think we're buds. I think the rest of the characters feel various amounts of pity, disgust, complete nonchalant ignorance of me. But you'll go over that stuff and how you feel about them. And it's really just a lot of fun. So that's really the fun part. So if it were me, I'd walk in with a lot of this stuff as just kind of ideas. And that's exactly what I did for our group session 0, is I actually kind of created at least one concept for each of the different clans. I think I really just ignored any ones where I'd be like miserable playing them, like I just had no interest in it. But for vast majority of these, I at least had a concept I could play. My Nosferatu one was my favorite, but like my Malkavian one, like I imagined that as Drusilla meets Carrie. Just kind of going through, like I said, ideas where you have a starting point, you kind of know what attributes, what disciplines you'd want to like play in. But I think with Vampire, the important thing is to be open. Be open to what the other players want to do, because that'll make it a lot more fun, knowing you can kind of pivot and play off of other cool ideas. But that is Vampire the Masquerade creation in a nutshell. If you guys have any questions, let me know below, or let me know a cool concept you had for a vampire character. I really like hearing about other people's interesting or even kind of cliche ones that are fun to play. But yeah, let me know below. And if you like this video, make sure to watch my video on role-playing like a nerd. Even though it's written for D&D, I think it marries very well into the idea of how to play a character in Vampire the Masquerade.